Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastroianni, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. All right, welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. I have with me on the show today, Chad Tucker. Chad is not only a friend, but he is also a real estate investor, began investing in real estate in 2020. He's got over 40 units with over $4.5 million in assets under management. He's also been for about 20 years now, he's been a paramedic and firefighter in the Orlando Fire Department. And his business is Acorn Capital Solutions. So Chad, I'm so glad to have you on today. Thanks so much.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. It's been a fun journey, and it's been great seeing you go through your journey as well, man.
Yeah, thanks. So for those who are listening, I mean, Chad is one of the people that I've been able to add to my network of friends and fellow investors. And every few weeks or so, we catch up on a call, and I often have questions, and we can kind of talk about some things. So I appreciate your mentorship through the process too. If you can, tell us a little bit about the deals that you've invested in so far, and how that real estate journey has gone for you.
So 2 years ago, I chose going down the road with multifamily. It just seemed like the one to fit the long-term goal that I wanted to do. So currently I have two deals. Both of them have been just through relationships like this with me and you. Like, one of them was a good relationship with a broker that I developed well over a year of talking to. And it's a 16 unit that we own outside of Gainesville, Florida. And within an hour or two of talking to a couple of investors and trying to put the pieces together, it was pretty much came together. And that's due in large part, like I credit myself with, a lot of work on the front end that you just see. Like, it never feels like you're doing anything productive, but when that deal comes, like, the legwork was there. So that was a very reassuring sign. Like, hey, I'm going down the right road. I'm doing the right things. All this last year and a half wasn't a waste of time. And it's been a great journey. We've turned 10 of the 16 units with a complete renovation. We've put about $170,000 in the property, which on a 1.6 purchase is a lot of money, but it needed roofs and a lot of deferred maintenance. So it's been a good learning experience through that, but it's also been a good learning experience because it was way under market value rent. And we've been able to partner with a solid property manager in the region. And we've actually been able to achieve market rents in that area, and especially higher than market rents in that little subsection of Gainesville, because of what we've been able to do to the property and what we've been able to give the tenant through good property management and fixing out the property. So it's knock on wood, it's been a very good blessing that we've gotten higher rents because we spent more than we wanted to, but it's been an amazing process to go, okay, this is my plan. It's been able to execute. Okay. The second property we bought was in June, and it was, I'm very comfortable in underwriting. I enjoy it. I love looking at numbers and just trying to figure out the puzzle pieces and the detectiveness of it and go, okay, well, this is what this means. And how does my business plan work? So one of my friends brought it to me and he goes, hey, this looks like a great deal. And I just need you to look over the numbers. And after 2-3 times of ripping up the underwriting and starting over again, I called him up and I was like, I have $50,000 in my bank account. I'm your partner on this deal. We're going to figure out how to make it work. It was just too good of a deal to turn down. The guy was a ground up developer. He built all of them through 2006. Most of them are 16 and 18. They're townhome style right outside of Knoxville. And he was getting way below market value rents. And we've done some like cosmetic work that needed to be done, like carpet that was bad and some other stuff on turns. But we've pretty much renewed 70% of the complex for a decent increase in value, but they're still way under market value rent. And it's operating way better than we thought. We'll probably be stabilized on that one in less than 4 months, which is crazy news to me.
That's really good. I've heard a few people, and we both belong to the Jake and Gino community. I've heard people in there mention townhome style rentals, and that's an interesting concept for me because I live in South Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia, and generally speaking, I think most of the townhome style communities that we see are individually owned. Someone owns each individual townhouse. So I guess when I joined the community about a year ago and meeting and networking with different people, it had never occurred to me that there would be a townhome style community that is rental. So can you talk a little bit about the differences that you see in townhome style communities?
I think the difference that you see between like a garden style or a quad or duplex or even a single family may be a little different, but like when you talk to like a garden style big tower or something like that compared to a townhome is the people who are going to rent that want to feel like they have a home, and it says it right in the name, townhome, and
Yeah.
we don't ours in Knoxville is not branded. It could easily be they each own individually. It could easily be that we keep it up. It really doesn't matter. But what we want is them to have pride in their home. And so that's one of the good things about it. I've noticed with some of the stuff I looked at is tenants like to stay a little bit longer in townhome style because it feels like their home, and they make it their home. They don't feel like they have a neighbor above them jumping around and doing stuff, and they have a lot more pride in it. So I enjoy it. But also talking to other operators, there's a there's a value in that because someone stays longer, you get less turn cost, but at the same time, someone stays longer and maybe you can get a little higher rent because it's more valuable of a product.
Sure, because if you turn it, then obviously there's usually a better ability to increase the rent a little bit more than if you were renewing.
I mean, it depends on your business plan. For me, like I have partners on the deal. So like I always try and look at it as like if I'm not going to try and push for market rent on stuff, I try and talk it over with my partners because I feel I have a fiduciary responsibility to do well by them with their money. So I
Sure.
don't want to if we got to renew and we got to go closer to market, we will, as long as that fits our business plan and we're all okay with it. And then at the same time, I want to be able to grow my business so I can go help more families that I'm already helping. So I can't do that if I give significant discounts. Like one of the first property we bought in Gainesville, their average rent was 750, and you couldn't rent anything for less than like 950, $1,000 a month in the region. So we took some of the units up to at the bottom of the market, but at the same time, the ones that we renovated, we took up above market value because we
Yeah.
offered a quality product.
Well, then, and and knowing your market, knowing what the rents are is obviously an important portion of it because people get nervous about, and I found myself in this with my smaller units that are close to home, right? You get nervous about raising rents. You get nervous about, oh, if I raise the rent, are they going to leave? And then is there a turnover cost? But you already knew that they couldn't even find anything for at least $200 more anyway. So turning it over and making that transition is a really good thing if you know your facts and if you know your data in your area, right?
I think it goes back to your business plan. Like, I think what a lot of people think when they buy a property, right? Like, if you buy a single family, a turnover is going to hurt you a whole lot worse. I inherited the property in Gainesville with a couple of tenants not even paying me, and they didn't pay for like
Mm.
3-4 months until we were able to fix those issues. And either they moved on or we were able to give them assistance that they needed until they could get on their feet. And that's okay because it's 16 units. I'm spreading out the issue. When it's a single family, it's a lot worse. But I think what happens with a lot of operators is they get so excited about closing the deal. They get so excited about cashing their checks when it comes to that stuff. But there's not a long-term budget for that year. And there's not, okay, well, if we got a turn, it's going to cost us X amount. We need to put that money in the bank before we take ours and treat it like a business.
Yeah. So, interesting conversation when we speak about the business portion of real estate investing is that, so your properties, if I'm correct, your properties are joint ventures. Are both of your properties joint venture opportunities currently?
Yeah, currently they're joint venture. And it's just because of when I went down the road to purchase the one in Gainesville, a good friend of ours, Bill, came in with a 1031 money, him and his partner, and they covered pretty much all of our down payment for the partnership. So it was kind of hard to turn down all your money day one with a
Right.
good equity straight with honestly a great partner. Bill Hamill out of Hamill Real Estate up in Albany he's been a great mentor and friend of mine since I started down this journey.
Yeah.
The second property we were able to pick up, but the caveat was the seller had a 1031 commitment and his buyer or his other place he was buying had a 1031 commitment. So the whole thing was we had to close that thing in 35 days.
Mm.
So doing a syndication, it takes some time getting commits and stuff. And this deal would have completely fit that model, but the 30-day window made us go really hard. And we found 2 or 3 great partners to come in with the capital we needed. And we closed it. And it's been, honestly, since June, it's overperformed what we expected. And we'll probably be easily higher than we expect by the end of this year.
That's interesting. So interesting in both of your deals, there was some sort of 1031 exchange component. And just to give, for those who don't understand, 1031 exchange is basically like kind exchange, where if you're moving your gains from an investment to another like kind investment, then you can save on the tax. But there's certain requirements, there's certain time frames that they have to live by. So when Chad mentions the idea that, he had to close in 30 days, that's because the person who was selling the property needed to move their money someplace within a certain amount of time. And if they didn't abide by all of that, then they obviously would be taxed on whatever the gain is on that property. So, we hear different people talk about different 1031 opportunities. And in a 1031 exchange, there's very specific guidelines where you are allowed to make that exchange without paying tax on your gain. However, if you fall outside of that guidelines, you essentially become unqualified or disqualified for that tax change. So when you start talking about, oh, we had to do it right away, we had to make it happen right away, I could see the balls being juggled in the air for something like that.
Yeah, and I credit a lot of it back to building the right partnership and community, right? Because there's a lot of stuff on added layers, but honestly, I was so worried about wanting to have all the answers when I got a deal right. And it scares every one of us. But at the end of the day, I knew the right people to call. They helped me out. We got it. We were well ahead of schedule and we closed with no issues. And it's been amazing, but that's a lot of legwork on the front end and having relationships. But the 1031 is a powerful tool that the federal government has incentivizes us as investors, but even just mom and pop investors, because housing is a basic need that everyone needs, and quality housing is too. So yeah, you get a tax deferment on your income of that property, but it's not like you can go spend it and buy a Lamborghini with it. you're just basically buying bigger stuff to help more people.
Right. And I guess I should clarify a little bit further. Not only do you have certain time frames, but you have to have a custodian involved. And there are a lot of requirements. You personally are never allowed to actually touch that money. It never can go into your account. So yeah, that's absolutely correct in what Chad's saying. You're not taking that money and going and buying a fast car or something like that and still avoiding the tax. It's not working that way.
I think that's the funny thing about real estate is everyone thinks, you see those guys with flashy Lamborghinis, but I know a lot of guys that just have a solid old pickup truck and they probably live more frugal. I have pretty much my entire net worth as far as liquidity over the last year out working, and I have no money coming in from it. I have close to 6 figures from a refi of my house and a little bit of cash I saved up out working on 2 deals. And I've never seen a distribution. I've never seen it. Actually, I just wired an extra $6,000 to pay a mortgage payment today for one of our deals because we were short for this month and next month will be solid. But I was like, man, everyone thinks you're just rolling in the dough, but you got to get there first.
That's true. And that's another interesting thing. And you mentioned the first year's funds, and I've been underwriting a bunch of deals. As a matter of fact, I have one right now that I'm pretty close to considering becoming an LP on an opportunity. And, I think one of the things that we look at that you're right, that many people don't consider is, you buy a property and let's just say it's a 15-unit property and everything's $200 below market rent. Well, it's going to take time to turn it. And it's going to take time to get it to that rent. And sometimes that means vacancy. And sometimes that means, expenses are high and income is low for the first 12, 18, maybe even up to 24 months, depending on the size of the property, the size of the turn, and how long it takes to do that. And maybe you could talk just a little bit about how you manage that and how a good way to keep an eye on that.
I'd love to tell you a great answer on how, but I was told through a good friend of mine that here locally, he has a lot of units and he's like, basically there's 2 modes when you buy a property. There's the stabilization mode, which is where you're trying to get it up to your business plan and work in it. And then once you get there, then it's running your business plan. So both my properties probably in the next month or 2 will be shifting to now we're just running the day to day. But when you're stabilizing it, stuff comes up, appliances you weren't planning are broken. Well, you're already in the middle of the plan. You can't stop the bus. So you got to
Mhm.
figure out where the money's coming from and keep going down the road. Your vacancy sometimes gets higher. The good news is the more you do it, the more you understand where those levers need to get pulled and what money you need to put aside. I would easily say whatever you think your renovation is, you need to add a little more, right? If you're going to do renovation, because like costs go up, you don't get to do it on time, you find more stuff, and you never want to be that guy going back to your partner saying, "Hey, we're short." You
Right.
don't want. I don't want. We had one where we didn't plan on replacing appliances on a turn, and the appliances that were there, I was told were solid. As the tenant moved in, we found out we had a bad stove and some other stuff, and me and my partners talked, and the person was under the assumption they were getting new appliances too, and we ended up spending about $2,700 on brand new appliances that we had no intention of, that we don't see a return on, because they were paying for the old set of appliances is
Right.
what we had budgeted,
Sure.
but we just spent an extra 3 grand basically, and we're not increasing the rent or nothing. So it's good because it's good for our long-term business, but it hurts when those costs come up. I think one of the things that you can always plan for anything when you have a business plan, but until you get in it, like there's no 100% way of knowing. So plan for higher vacancies. I know 100% what my vacancy costs or where my break-even vacancy is. And there's been a couple of months, and I'm glad it's only 1 or 2 months that I've operated below that number, because it scares me.
Sure.
I know at the end of the day, when I get all my rents in, we're not going to break even. We're going to put money in this deal out of our savings account. And that's just part of the business, right? Like if you run a business, that's what you're going to do. So I just look at it as, okay, this is the month that we're going to overspend, but here in a couple of months, we're solid, as long as we're going to hit this mark.
I appreciate your open and honesty about that, because I think oftentimes, even on podcasts and, social media or whatever, I think we often hear about the singles as if they're the strikeouts, right? Because it's like, oh, not everything's going to be a home run. Some of them are singles and doubles, but there are months where it's just really tough. And when you do it in scale, like you said, the things that you don't expect come up, and and even that appliance thing, right? Buying the new appliance package today probably saved you a phone call 3 or 4 months from now. Hey, we
Exactly.
moved in. These appliances that you said were good are not working, and now you have to replace them. And now it's like, it's still coming either way.
And I think one of the things too is like over the last year, but especially the last couple of months, operating my deals and asset managing for another friend of mine, I've come very clear. Like my mission is to provide good, clean, safe, professionally managed housing to blue collar middle class workers, right? Like I'm not looking for the class A high end stuff. I'm not looking for the subsidized assistance stuff. I want to provide good housing to who I was when I started out on this journey renting. And in order to do that, like I have to feel comfortable with myself. So part of the conversation of those appliances was, okay, we can either do it now, we can do it later, but if we do it later, we're going to lose faith in this person. They're going to lose faith in us as operators, and we're not going to stand by our word. But at the same time, everything else is just going to be a letdown to them after we let them down on this. So we wanted to stand by our word, and we cleaned it up. And okay, well, it was a miscommunication between the property manager and you that cost me $3,000. Please don't do that again. But at the same
Yeah.
time, we're going to make, we're going to make us whole on this, and we're going to try and figure out a way to cut the cost where we can, but at the same time, provide a good, clean, safe, professionally managed product.
Sure. So are you looking now? Are you looking for properties? Or are you still underwriting for new opportunities?
Every day.
Every day. Right.
I think if you're in this business, so like my role that I see myself is in acquisitions and asset management. So I will never stop looking, and I will never stop asset managing. As I grow, maybe I'll do some capital raising, but honestly, I'd rather partner with great people to come in and bet on me and my processes to give returns to their investors. And in doing that, like I have to constantly look. Like I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $500 million of valuation I looked at over the last year. And when I looked at my thing, and
Wow.
some of that's big deals that like are out of my scope right now, but I needed to get the reps under my belt to learn it, right? And then a lot of them are just the smaller stuff that I look at, the sub 150 BC assets, 1980 or newer construction, anything like that that comes across my desk. It gets underwritten, it gets looked at, and it gets considered. If it gets an offer or not, it just depends.
Sure. Well, that's interesting. And, we talk about you have to underwrite approximately 80 to 90 deals in order to get one. And, you're talking about that you probably underwrote about $500 million and you now have about $4.5 million under management. So it's really around
It's
the
like a 1%
1%, right?
rule.
I think you're proving those statistics to be accurate. So
It roughly comes out to the math of 100 underwriting is probably pretty correct. Now, it could be different of your market. It could be different if you're partnered with different, like, there's tons of variables, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to constantly, I call it, I got to kiss a lot of ugly frogs,
yeah,
right? Like, broker calls me up, hey, I got this deal. You're interested? Yep. As long as it's not a nursing home, a self-storage, or something that is not multifamily, I'm interested. And they're like, well, I was like, send it to me. And I'd rather tell you no than you not send it to me. I want you to know that I will look at everything that is multifamily, because I'd rather be able to tell them no than not see it. Because the more you see, the more chances you have to find that deal. Like I said, the one that I bought in Tennessee was not even, I didn't even look in Tennessee. It came to me across my desk to a friend. And I would have never found that deal if it wasn't for a networking relationship and giving value to other people, helping them underwrite. And he just wanted a second set of eyes.
yeah. That's great. Well, and another thing that I know from you and from our conversations is that you really focus on your relationships with brokers. And I think that's really important. I think that cannot be understated. I know in the last conversation that we had, as a matter of fact, I have a notepad right over here. In the last conversation we had, I was talking about, where I was underwriting deals and where I was looking, and you quickly rattled off about 7 names of brokers and said, reach out to this one, reach out to this one, reach out to this one. And those broker relationships, and that's how you get those phone calls that say, hey, are you interested in this property? Right.
Yeah, because I mean, if it's on market, it's not that it's not a bad deal. It's not a bad deal for a lot of people because a lot of people have seen it. So you might be able to make it a deal, but the real caveat is when you either get into the conversations with them and you get the listings before they get listed, while they're putting together all the pretty flyers and stuff. Or, there's sometimes they call up a seller and the seller's like, look, I'm not giving you a listing agreement. I'm not doing any of that. I will pay you a commission if you bring me a price that I agreed to, right? So that's considered it's a pocket listing. Like, it's nothing off market, but they're not going to let them market it to everyone. They're not going to send out flyers. When you make that list, that's gold, because like I just had one recently. I was probably competing against 10 people on, and that's it. Wow. 10 people. That is one broker trying to break into a new market, knew 10 people that he thought would buy it. And I was one of those 10. So that was like, aha, like this is paying off. But I mean, it's not, you don't get those phone calls overnight, like at all, because they want to, if they're going to risk their reputation, they want to risk it on someone that they trust, know, and like.
Sure. That's great. So I want to transition a little bit into, this is the Healthy Investor Podcast. I like to talk about some healthy habits, healthy routines. And you and I have spoken before a little bit about, being in the fire department for 20 years is obviously a high stress environment, and just sort of mental health state and sort of how you deal with that and what that's like.
Yeah. And so I've done the fire service for 20 years. It was never my intention as a kid to go into the fire service. I hated it because my dad did it. But man, I had one incident, an accident that I saw, and it made me think about it. I had a friend ask me to volunteer with them at a fire department. And man, I ran my first call, and it was amazing because I was able to help. Like, I was able to be a part of people's lives in different moments of time. I went up the ranks. I'm a lieutenant with my fire department in Orange County here in Central Florida. And I feel I'm respected as a lieutenant, and I have really good people, and it's been amazing. But like, what I've noticed probably going down this journey in the multifamily, and why I started to go down it, was I was struggling with stuff internally too. And I know there's other people that have retired and stuff where you don't realize it, because in this industry, when I started, it was, you see stuff or you go through stuff and you just put it in the box, you shut the box, and you don't talk about it. As I went through my career, it was more acceptable to talk about stuff. And it is a lot more nowadays. Like, we're very open. It ain't like, shut up, don't process it. Because suicide and mental illness has been a really big thing in the fire service. It's kind of like the military, right? But man, the last 2, 3 years, like it's some stuff. I feel like almost my analogy is it's almost like my cup I can feel is getting near the top, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm almost at capacity. So that's one of the reasons that I want to go into something else. There's a lot of other sacrifices that I don't think people understand, that people that work in the public safety field do, like not just me, but cops and other people, dispatchers and EMS personnel. You get to see a lot of stuff that like I don't think you can understand.
Mm.
Anyone can unless you're in the industry. So it's kind of hard to talk to people about it. So you don't, or you don't want to come home and talk to your wife about it. So you just kind of button it up, and you don't want to talk to your friends about it because they won't understand either. So being open and honest and transparent as I am, I've been talking to a lot of people, and I had a really bad accident not long ago, and I literally got off that call, which it was horrible as far as like going through the call, but my guys did an amazing job. They did the best they could to help the gentleman that had the accident. And I called my old lieutenant, who's like a mentor to me. And I was like, how do I keep asking these guys and girls that I work with, even though they say they're good, to keep going through this every single day and sacrificing to know that long term it's going to have an effect on them, even though they don't see it now. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
So
journey.
yeah, that's interesting. And, many of the, civil servants that we speak to, and, those who are essentially putting their life on the line to try and help others, right? You touched on it from the very beginning, right? Your intention was to try and help others. Your goal was to try and help others. But you need to take care of number one a little bit, right? You need to kind of worry about, making sure that your health, your mental health is in the right state. Do you have any sort of habits or routines that you go through to try and help with that?
I think the biggest thing that has helped me is communicating and being open and honest and reflection with myself. Like, okay, I see this is happening. Who do I need to talk to? And reaching out to the right people. But honestly, as far as like changing and putting myself first, like that's a big thing for a lot of us in the public safety field, because we're always about putting others, my wife, my kids, my family, and going, okay, I need some time for me. And that's been a good thing. Like there's some days I just know I need to rest, and I rest because I don't sleep well at work.
Mm.
There's some days where, you know, you just need a day. And then there's some days that you just need to stay busy.
Yeah.
Uh, I started meditating when I joined the Jake and Gino community, and kind of going down the road to figure out what I need to do to help myself process a little bit better. Nowhere near do I think I'm good at it, because my mind is always racing 100 miles. But what it does is it allows me to reflect on stuff that I didn't think I would need to reflect on, and to slow down. I think I joined another mastermind of like-minded men that talk. And one of the things that the head of the mastermind was saying, Ian, was you just need to slow down, right? And that's very counterproductive to my personality. But I look back this last year and a half, 2 years that I've been going down my journey with multifamily, and my biggest success has come where I go, let me put the brakes on everything. Let me just sit and reflect, and then I go to work on what's important. So I think slowing down and just taking time has been the biggest thing that's helped me.
But it's interesting that you talk about meditation and slowing down. I know for me personally, I try to meditate every morning. And there have been times that I've gotten away from it. There have been times I've gotten away from it for periods of time, right? Maybe a few weeks go by, and, we, it took me a little bit of time to figure it out. We got a new puppy right after Christmas, and he wakes up at 5:30 every day. Right. And it's like, that was my meditation time, dude. That was my reading.
Yeah, like you're in my zone.
Right, right. And we've come up with a schedule, and we found the ways to work around it. And now I have my time, and then I spend more time trying to take him out at night, and then my wife does the morning thing, and we're figuring that out. But for a while there, I had slipped away from my meditation. And I think the easiest way for me to explain how I feel meditation helps me is that I can't control what's going to happen to me, but I can control how I react. And I
Yes.
think that meditation has helped me to think before I react, to, as you said, slow down for just a second. And on the days that I do it, I feel much more much more secure in my ability to just stop for a second and say, okay, wait a second, things are starting to head out down the wrong end road of the track or whatever. How can I fix this, rather than just being, without meditation? I feel like I have more of the ability to just be reactionary, just react. And that space between what happens and how we react is so important.
I kudos to you, man, 100%. Because that's something I struggle with, is like, how do I put that barrier of like, no, this is for me and I need to commit to it. It could be working out, it could be meditating, it could be reading, it could be whatever works for you. But I think especially in men, it's harder, but women too, because we want to be good to our kids and to our spouse. And we feel like we got to give everything. But it's almost like the analogy of the airplane. Like it's annoying when I fly, because I don't fly as much, but every single time they're like, the oxygen will come down, and put it on yourself first before you put it on someone else. And the fire service, we have what's called grit drills, where like if a firefighter goes down, we practice, right? And I taught for a long time. And one of the times we taught, we basically made the firefighter that was down and needed help basically unattainable. Like they could not get to them before they ran out of their air. And the officer and the personnel were going to have to make a decision. Did they push through knowing that they did not have the resources or capabilities, or did they go back? And that was very eye-opening for me, was to watch the guys have to process that. And even myself in that training, you feel like a selfish like jerk, because our whole mission is to help people. But sometimes you can't help people, and you can't put yourself first unless you put yourself first, and then you can go back and reevaluate and get it done.
Yeah. Wow. That's very powerful. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were going to take this road, and it's so cool. I appreciate, because that's obviously a different world for me. I've never worked in that kind of environment. And it's a very different world for me. Yeah. Most people.
We made that, so the training scenario is made that way because it really happened. Right. So we wanted our personnel to experience it, but we wanted to see what our officers, including myself at the time, would do, because you have very type A personalities in our industry, and they want to do a task. They're like, some of my guys are like bloodhounds. If I send them a task, it's going to get done. Like if I tell them, and that's the great thing about them, because they're not looking at everything else. They're looking at their task. And that's what happened. And there were some lieutenants that, like, I think they're goobers, but man, they made the right call. And I literally had to stop 2 or 3 fist fights, because we're a large department, right? Like I had like 60 something lieutenants plus going through, and like all their crews. And I literally had like fist fights almost happening between the firefighter and the engineers and the lieutenant, because he's like, you killed him, blah, blah. I was like, this is a freaking training scenario, dude. Like, one, he's not dead. He'll be at dinner tonight.
Right.
He'll be at dinner tonight. 2, your lieutenant made the right call, because it's either 1 coffin or possibly 1 coffin or 6.
Right. Wow.
So that was eye-opening to me, teaching that years ago, but also like now I'm having a harder time with my family, but putting those boundaries in place to give myself my own time. Like I don't work the overtime like I used to. I don't do some of the stuff I used to, because I want that time for me and my family.
Wow. That's powerful stuff. I appreciate it. Well, awesome.
No
so we're, I want to make sure that I'm, obviously respectful of your time, and I want to get into the final segment, because this has been great, and you and I have had conversations where we've spoken for probably almost 2 hours. So I know that we're
like, oh man, what do you got going on today?
Right, exactly. So I want to get into the final segment. I ask the same 3 questions of every guest, and so for you, what is your definition of success?
I thought it was becoming a fire chief. I thought it was retiring with a pension, right? Like I was on the career path for that. I turned down a promotion probably about 3-4 years ago, and it was the best decision I ever did for myself. And it's not because the industry's wrong, but I just was ready for another journey. And now it's my goal in life is to transform lives through real estate, is what I say. That's like it. Like not just, I don't want a private jet or anything. I just want to be comfortable and well off. I want my investors to do well. But I also want all of our partners, the property managers, the contractors, everyone to have a better quality of life, because we do things right and they're treated good. As well as our residents, I want them to be proud of where they call home and know that they're taken care of. When they pay their rent, they get a good quality product.
Yeah. I love that. I love that line. And I know, just from knowing you and from our conversations that that's truly become your truth. I've heard you say several times that your goal is to transform lives through real estate. And I know you're already starting to do that. And I know you're going to do a whole lot more of it. So keep it
Well,
up.
we got
And
big things in mind.
I
We just
love
got to
it.
get there.
You're going. I see it.
Oh yeah. Just one day at a time.
So second question, for someone who's new to real estate investing or even just learning to focus on their goals or path to success, can you give a book recommendation?
The one book, like everyone says, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a great book, or The One Thing, which is another great book. But the one book that really did it for me, and now looking back, like I understand why, because it was right in that period where I was concerned about taking a promotion, was called The Slight Edge. And one of the exercises that he has you do in there is he has you write your eulogy for your own funeral. And I wrote it. I was actually on a cruise with my wife every February for our anniversary. We take a cruise together or something just for me and her for our time as a relationship. And I took some time to myself and I wrote it and I looked at it and I was like, I will never get to where I want to get as far as this eulogy doing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
So that's what caused me to change my past for a lot of stuff because I realized I'm going to California and I want to get to New York.
Huh. That's interesting. So great book, by the way, The Slight Edge Principles are excellent. The first time that I read The Slight Edge, my wife and I both read it. I guess, I don't know if she read it first or if I read it first, but that same Christmas, this was probably about 4 years ago, that same Christmas, there's a Slight Edge for teens. And I think we bought that for 3 or 4 friends' kids that were in that age group. And we often talk to our daughter about the Slight Edge principles, just do a little bit of exercise every day, just do a little bit of eating right every day, just do a little bit of making sure you're doing your homework. It's like the concept of the Slight Edge is to just do a little bit every day. And then the compound over time really makes a huge difference. So that's a great book recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah.
So before we get into the final question, first, I want to thank you for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. We had a little bit of scheduling. We worked it out, and I'm glad we're able to get it worked out on both of our terms. How can we support you, and how can people reach out to you if they're trying to touch base?
Well, if anyone wants to reach out, my phone number I put out every single time, you're more than welcome to call me. It's 850-206-4603. And then you can look me up on social at Chad Tucker. But we also now currently have a website. It's nothing fancy, but it's acorncapitalsolutions.com, which is my company, Acorn Capital. So you can reach out there and, see if I can help you with whatever, if it's just you need help or if you're stuck on something. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am without people doing that for me. So I'm more than willing to help anyone else. And if you have money that you want to invest, feel free to call me too.
Excellent. So final question, if you can think back to me to a young Chad, maybe around 10 to 12 years old, sort of knowing what you learned so far on your journey, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to yourself or even to any pre-teenage child to help guide towards success?
So one of the first things is success or money or whatever only comes from one thing, and that's adding value to people. If you want a lot of something, add a lot of value to a lot of people. So it doesn't have to be anything grand. Like you can be completely fine. The other second one I would say is you have to do something that you enjoy the journey. Like I have tenants that don't pay. I have headaches. I have renovation costs. I had a horrible month last month where like just some stuff didn't go as planned and there was a lot of fallout. But at the end of the day, like I wasn't mad. I wasn't upset. I wasn't angry. It was no one's fault. It's just how this works. And I enjoy the journey. And if you don't enjoy the journey of what you're doing, if that's at your W-2, if that's with your family, you need to reevaluate, are you doing your sole purpose in your right journey? And then the last thing I would tell myself is the 2 things that you have to do every day is you have to be clear on your goals or clarity and what you want. And you have to be consistent. Like you said, the 1%, like I don't need to go lift 150 pounds every single day. You know what I mean? Like I just need to do a little bit of exercise every day. I don't need to go run a marathon once a year. I just need to run a couple miles a week. You know what I mean? Like, so if you just do a little bit, consistently, it's way better for you long term. So if that's just looking at a few deals for me, finding a few offers, calling a few people, making a few phone calls, or just not doing any of it and having time for my family.
That's great. Thank you so much. Chad Tucker, appreciate you coming on the Healthy Investor podcast. For those of you who are listening, make sure you check him out, Acorn Capital Solutions. If you're listening in today and you got value out of this, please give a positive review. I'd really appreciate it, and make sure you make a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.